Well, let's look at rainfall and storages, and what an interesting year. When we look at the 2019-20 irrigation season, particularly for the Murray-Darling Basin, but this was also shared in many other areas in Australia, is we had a very dry start of the season. In fact, when we go back through the Waterfind's rainfall record, which goes back well over 100 years, when we look at that 2019-20 season, the start was the driest in the last 100 years that I went back on the record. It was the driest. In fact, only about 34% of the average rainfall fell during that period. So that coincided in historic low inflows, historic low dam storages, and historic low allocations occurring to the market and historic high prices. However, as we all know, it started to rain, and particularly in the Murray-Darling Basin, we've seen a rebound to average rainfall occur in the last 3 months, and that rebound has been quite strong. And in fact, in the month that we've just had, in some areas recorded 150-200% of their average rainfall for the month. So quite a strong rebound, which coincided with not necessarily increased storages yet in allocations, but an increased level of confidence and an increased level of perception of us receiving stronger allocations. So decreased water prices, and particularly temporary water prices, have coincided at the same time as our increased rainfall. Yeah, we've been watching these average rainfalls with much interest because they, have a major effect to the quantity of water which you're going to get for the next upcoming irrigation season. And what we've noticed is a couple of really interesting factors. First of all is when the average rainfall actually started to occur, and is there any past seasons which we could use to give us a bit of an indicator about, if this string continues, what that might mean for our water system rebound. And we're looking at the 2016-17 irrigation season as being an indicator of what's possible. In that season, the average rainfall started later on, and then we had a string of about 5 months in that season of at or above average rainfall. I think there was 1 month in there which represented a lower average, but it was certainly at or above average for most of the sort of autumn winter inflow series. And our system storages rebounded greatly in that year, and it enabled the water planners to provide irrigators with a lot stronger allocation in that year. In fact, we went from a 3 odd million megalitre allocation in the year before to about 11 million megalitres being allocated across the Murray-Darling Basin in that year as a result of the increase in storage inflows. So what we're seeing in this year is that rainfall started to turn the corner really in February. And so we've now had February, March and April being at or above average rainfall in the Murray-Darling Basin. In the southern Murray-Darling Basin, it's slightly below average rainfall, but definitely a rebound in those average rainfall conditions occurring over those months, even in the south. April, well above average rainfall, and April's a key time. In fact, old water planners used to actually say if we have an early break, there's potentially going to be a wet sequence that might come through, and a later break would mean that there was going to be a dry sequence. And so dryland farmers may also be using the Anzac Day as a bit of an indicator. So the timing of when our average rainfall has started, I believe, is important, because it's almost like priming the pump. If you take the pump being our catchments, you wet those catchments down, the pump is primed for average rainfall to actually produce some very good inflows into our system. That pump has been primed now for a number of months in our catchment, and I think even at average rainfall or above average rainfall will definitely mean an increase in inflows into our dams more than normal. The BOM is forecasting now a wetter sequence or a wetter than usual winter period in our major catchments in the Murray-Darling Basins. Certainly forecasts are heading in the direction, the pump is primed, so to speak, as far as the wet sequence that we've just experienced. And so I think there's a good chance that we're going to see some quite large increases to allocations if the average rainfall continues. So what does that mean for allocations or possible allocations this year? Certainly when we look at that 2016-17 period, allocations got over 11 million megalitres for that season. Just prior to that season, we started with a heavier allocation. It was about 3 million megalitres. Dam storage levels, however, were similar to what they are now to achieve that, but we're not using 11 million megalitres as our planning number. We're using about 9 million megalitres, or a fraction over 9 million megalitres, because we're generally conservative anyway in our approach about what might be allocated in the basin this year if this continuation of wet inflow occurs. That 9 or a bit over 9 million megalitres, you've got to remember that's going to be about 3 times what we've been currently allocated this year. It might be that water planners might be a little bit conservative about whether they give those allocations out straight away. So it might not be until September or October until we see some of those stronger allocations. But we sort of think that they could be over 9 million megalitres of water might be allocated if the average rainfall sequence or above average rainfall sequence continues, and it might even be stronger than that if it's a wetter than average condition.